Alright, welcome back. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a look at this little pistol right here. This is a 1965 H&R 32 double action, and it has some issues. Before I started doing any filming, I actually repaired one part of this, and it's a little flat spring that is basically the trigger return. So what's happening with this is that before, the trigger would pull back and it wouldn't return back to its operating position, and once I replaced that, that all functions fine. And I had to make this little spring. It's a little flat spring, and I can actually do a little video on how to actually do that. But after fixing that problem, we noticed another problem. And what's taking place now is when you pull the trigger, the cylinder rotates, would fire if there was ammunition in it, and it rotates back when you let the trigger go back to its rest position. So I did a little research, and underneath this trigger housing there appears to be a little pin that goes up and actually presses on the nose of the cylinder. And I believe what it does is provide a little tension so that the cylinder stays in place, so that the ratchet comes down and the trigger go back to its rest position. But when I took this apart originally, that never came out, and upon further inspection, it is frozen in there. So this has been soaking for quite a while in penetrant, and I'm going to add a little heat with a heat gun to see if we can get it out. It's really not worth a lot of money, this particular handgun, but I don't want to damage it. I don't want to heat it up with a torch or something like that and affect the nickel plating that's on here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull this apart, and we're going to see if we can get that pin out with a little. Alright, so there's a couple of things that we have to think about before we pull this apart. Number one, that generally speaking, anytime you remove a sight or a pin, you push from the left to the right. So bear that in mind. Number two, anytime you remove a screw, you need to use special screwdrivers. So this company right here, Grace USA, these are pretty reasonable. They are Philister screwdrivers. So if you look at them, you can see the tip has a little bit of a grind to it. So they are tapered, typical of a normal screwdriver, but then they're ground square against the two faces here so that they fit the Philister screw. Now I don't have a screwdriver that small, so I took this little pocket screwdriver and I did the same thing, and I machined a little flat on there so that it fits the Philister screw. So we're going to be very careful. The grip on this side, actually is broken and it's been glued together, so we're going to be careful with that. Hopefully it's not going to fall apart. We're going to start with removing the grips. Now here's a shot of the flat spring that I made, and it's taped together so that I knew how it set when it was in its original form. Okay, so I just put a piece of clear tape on there just to get it to sit, so I knew what it looked like before I made a new one, because I wasn't sure. This is an old gun. I'm not familiar with this particular style. There are a few different manufacturers that made very similar guns to this, Iver Johnson, and the spring that they use for the trigger return, there are different variations. So this one I wasn't familiar with, So luckily we had the piece and we didn't lose it somewhere along the line before I acquired this guy many years ago. Alright, let's see if this comes off of here easily. And it did come off in one piece. Looks like somebody glued this one right here somewhere along the line also. Alright, I'm going to remove the mainspring. And then I am going to remove the cylinder. And now we're going to remove the pins to expose this section up in here. Okay. And this is really a pain in the butt to put back together. Everything, you have to kind of hold everything together while you slide the pins in. It's really a pain. So we're going to pop these out left to right. They actually push out because they do have a lot of spring pressure on them. There's one. Alright, so we have the 3 pins and screw, and this assembly is going to come apart. We don't care about the trigger assembly, that's got another screw up in there. And this is the spring that we made. It was just a flat spring. And basically what I made this out of is a piece of shim stock, static feeler gauge, the proper thickness. I heated it up cherry red until all the temper was out of it. Bended it up how I wanted it, put a little curve in it. Then I put it on a little copper plate, heated it up till it was cherry red, oil quenched it, and then cleaned it all up, get it as shiny as I could, put it on my copper plate, and then I heated the bottom of the copper plate until it turned like a straw colored brown. Then let it cool down naturally, and we get a nice spring. Okay. All right. So as you can, if you can see up inside here, there's a little spring right there. Behind that is that pin that we're talking about. That comes up. And it comes right up under this little area right here. And that's what we got to try to get out of there. So it fits in this little recess, and basically it puts pressure on the nose of the cylinder, and that keeps it from going backwards. So that little spring holds tension on it. And that spring, from what I remember when I pulled this apart last time, it doesn't really want to come out of there. Alright, so this right here is the latch for the cylinder rod. I might just punch that one out also, just to get it out of the way. This also has a little tiny spring on it. And we can just see that little spot right there where that pin looks like it comes up and touches that. It's not very big. So what we have to do is soak that a little bit more, and I'm going to apply some heat to it. Now the heat's going to allow it to expand a little bit and hopefully get that penetrating fluid down inside there. Let's give it a shot. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Burnt here. Let's see if we can remove that pin. Alright. And change to the optivisors. Let's put a little more heat on it. That's not even thinking about moving. Well, it lifted up. And we got it out. So that little pin right there, I don't know if you guys can see. Hopefully it don't start a fire here. The pin is a little hot. That little pin right there, that's what it does. So basically that little spring, just push it up and it puts a little tension on there. But it was, I mean, it was in there hard. I tried pushing that out a few times before. I couldn't even, it wouldn't budge. And I was almost thinking it wasn't really a pin there, but I mean, it just makes sense that something has to keep it from allowing that cylinder to keep rolling back. There's got to be something for tension. So, we're going to clean that all up. We'll come back and we'll put this all back together and see how this works.